can't list I can't list as many things that you've done, and I can't thank you enough for your leadership for this group. We've got you a small token. If you'd like to say a few words, I'd love to have you do that. Okay. I love you too.
There's a note up here. You think that's okay?
That's fine.
Okay. The MPO is the most important table in the metro, I think. Not only do we have money that causes people to come together and compromise, but it's the one table of all the 2080s where the mayors keep coming, the top elected officials are here, the supervisors are here, and I just think what we do is so important. There's so few things that we can do regionally well. Transportation is one of them, and using the scarce dollars to take care of poor people and projects that otherwise wouldn't get done is exactly what we should be doing when we get together as a region. So good luck. I'm always here to support you, and most of you are my friends, and I will continue to be.
Hey, Chris, we have one small thing for you from the MPO staff as well.
We thought it was fitting to get you a customized.
Oh man! Wow!
It says Coleman Way on it. It's also got the MPO logo and then your dates of service on there as well.
That's fantastic.
That is awesome.
Very nice.
I love that.
That's awesome. Coleman Way. There you go.
I like it. Hey, thank you all very much. Very proud of the things we've done together here at the MPO. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Good work.
Very nice.
That's very nice.
Looks good in the office.
It will.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Item number 2 is a vote on the approval of the agenda. Since I have 2 people in here.
Second.
We got our names in the minutes.
Yes. All right, moved and seconded by McCoy and Coleman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 3 is vote on the approval of the meeting minutes for May 20th. Any discussion about those?
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded, McCoy, Coleman, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 4 is consent vote on the approval of the financial statement. Todd, do you want to give us a brief update?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. The financial statement was in your packet. There was just our normal transactions, pretty much a couple reimbursements from SERPTA and normal expenses for the month. So I'd recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd? Any discussion? Somebody moved it.
Madden.
Second, Oliver.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 5 is the time of the meeting for any public comment on these MPO actions. Is there anyone from the public, Tracy, that's on that would like to give a statement or a comment?
Not that we're aware of.
No, there is not.
That's amazing. All right, we'll move on to item number 6. Item number 6 is report vote. If you miss your audience, the draft fiscal year 2022-2025 transportation improvement program. Saroshi, I believe, is going to give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you. So the MPO has been working on the transportation improvement program for the fiscal years 2022 through 2025 for the last few months. We now have the draft TIP document as well as the project listing up on the MPO website for public review and comment. We also have a public meeting that's scheduled on June 23rd at 5 p.m. The information to log on to the meeting is up on the website as well. So right now we are in the public input process. So we're taking any comments, any corrections, any other modifications that need to be done to the draft tip. We have also submitted the draft document to the DOT for their review and comment. Once we receive all of the input, we are going to incorporate that and finalize the document for approval, and we'll be bringing it before the MPO committees next month before submitting it to the DOT on July 15th. So you all should have received a table along with your meeting reminder a couple days ago. I just wanted to clarify what that was. At the executive committee meeting last week, it was requested to provide a table which kind of shows how the projects may have changed between last year's TIP and this year's TIP. So I went ahead and compiled the list of projects that may have gone through some modification. And the modifications include new projects that might have received new funding, existing projects that might have received new funding, as well as programming and schedule changes. So that's what's included in the table that was sent to you and is mostly for your information. So if you have any questions or comments about the draft TIP, I'll be happy to take them at this time. Otherwise, we are seeking approval of the draft 2022 TIP. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, this is a voting item.
I'll move it.
Motion. Second,
All right, moved by Coleman, second by
Reva.
Reva. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 7 is report vote on fiscal year 2021-2024 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. Andrew is here in the crowd. I think he's gonna give us an update.
Yes, thank you. So there's a proposed amendment to the 2021 TIP from Dallas County. This is for their L46 bridge project on 250th Street, which is north of Urbandale and west of Grimes. So the proposed amendment to this project is to add it into federal fiscal year 2021 of the TIP. When this project was being programmed, it got inadvertently added to the RPA 11 TIP because it's in the MPO planning area. It needs to be within the MPO TIP. So staff recommends approval of this proposed amendment. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks for the update. Any questions for Andrew or comments?
I'll move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 8 is a report and vote on fiscal year 2021-2024 Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Sarosh is going to give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you. So this is also a TIP amendment request for the 2021 TIP. The amendment request actually came to us from the DOT for a ICAP project that received funding in fiscal year 2022 for the for DART's Route 17 extension project to the Bondurant Amazon fulfillment facility. So the DOT is requesting this amendment so that they can transfer the funds right now to the award recipients. And in order to do that, they need the projects programmed in the 2021 TIP. So that is essentially what we are doing right now. The executive committee last week asked some questions about the project itself. And I was, at that time, I didn't have all of the answers. And so I reached out to DART, and I'm happy to report on some of the questions that were asked about this particular project. So a few of the questions that were asked were regarding how many employees were being served as a result of this route extension, the frequency of the service, and Amazon's contribution and involvement and that kind of thing. So the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Bondurant employs about 1,000 folks, and this service is available to all of them. However, DART is projecting that roughly 3% or so might use this particular transit service. They are also observing some additional ridership along the Adventureland Drive, where employees are taking this route service since it began in November of last year. So they have been seen some usage there as well. The service frequency is roughly matching to the shift timings at the Amazon facility. So it goes there about 5 times a day and matches with the shift timings at the facility. And as of right now, Amazon is not contributing anything towards this particular service to their facility. However, DART has indicated that they are in conversation with Amazon with a potential partnership in the future through DART's Unlimited Access program, which enables employees to be able to have free transit service, to be able to use the DART's transit service for free as a result of a contract between the employee and DART. So with that, if you have any additional questions about this particular project, I'll be happy to take them at this time. Otherwise, we are recommending approval of this TIP amendment request so that we can program the project into the 2021 TIP as requested by the DOT. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Oliver, move approval.
Second, Madden.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 9 is report and vote on Title VI documentation from Gunner.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've been working on Title VI documentation. This is something that we do every 3 years to comply with the Title VI Act, the Title VI, the Civil Rights Act. In your packets would have been 2 documents for your review. And as you would see, the document we prepared for federal highways is a pretty basic template, whereas the document produced for the Federal Transit Administration is much more expansive, includes many different documents. And some of these you have seen. Most recently, you have approved the Public Participation Plan and Language Assistance Plan. A couple of them are new to you. The demographic report is one of them, but that's really a compilation of existing data that we already had, so the data itself will be familiar to you. Before I move on, I will note that we have not had any Title VI complaints. So the demographic profile pulls from other sources, notably the Environmental Justice Report. The other thing we did as part of the documentation for federal transit was to document the gender and ethnicity of our committees. So as you can see, not to surprise anybody who attends our meetings, it is predominantly male, about 2-to-1 ratio, and also predominantly white. That's all I have for presentation. Happy to take any questions if you have them. Otherwise, staff recommends approval.
Gunner, thank you. Any questions for Gunner? This is a voting item, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved by Haddon.
Second, Reva.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 10 is a report and vote on the EJ report update. Allison, you did a lot of great work. Why don't you give us an update?
I'm going to wear you out with this one. Last time you'll hear about it, we are bringing this back to you for a vote of approval today. Just as a reminder, the subcommittee was formed out of the MPO Executive Committee's request. We convened twice to go over methodology, requirements, and funding. And then the following slides and information are the recommended amended methodology. Zach, in the next item, we'll talk about the funding mechanisms that came out of that as well. Now you can go on. Thanks. So previously we used the regional average, which you'll see there in the middle of that chart there. We're moving to the right side to the 70th percentile, which caps the number of census tracts at 34. So we're using that top 30%. And then just as a reminder, there are 113 census tracts in the MPO planning area. So that 34 is that top 30. You can go on. Thank you. So this is visually how it shakes out. Constricts it back to the urban area, although there is, or the Des Moines urban area, although there are still tracks in Urbandale, Clive, and West Des Moines. Next slide. So just some of the next steps. After it's approved today, we'll publish it online. We'll update our online mapping portal to reflect these changes and then integrate this into the MPO planning processes. And in the next agenda item, Zach will talk about those funding pieces as well that came out of this conversation. So with that, staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
All right. Any questions or comments for Allison? For the committee?
I'll leave it to Supervisor Boyd, who chaired the committee and did a good job. But I would like to say I'm really proud this is on the agenda at my last meeting. I think it is vitally important, and Allison did a great job. Joe, you're right. I always worry that these good reports, after we do a lot of work, sit on the shelf and don't really have an impact on our planning, funding, and progress as a region. We do this in hopes that we are measuring ourselves against the investments in areas that aren't as politically astute, politically connected, so that projects can happen in those neighborhoods as well. And to that end, I'd like to recommend a slight amendment to this really good report. And that is that we ask MPO to create an annual short report, a page or 2 or 3, that evaluates the efforts, not just of the MPO, but really more importantly, the state and federal governments on the investments and projects that we've done that benefit the residents of these EJ areas. I wouldn't want it to be, take hundreds of hours, but I think it would be really constructive to measure ourselves over time, see the trend lines, and provide that report to our congressional delegation in DC, the governor's office, and our local officials. We want this to make a difference. It's a really good report, and I think we owe it to ourselves to be both innovative in how we drive better services to these areas, but also how we measure that over time. So I'd like to add that as a slight amendment, Chair. Okay. One yes.
I would second that amendment.
All right. Any other discussions?
But just add, just based on Mr. Coleman's comments, we have internally been talking among staff about how to incorporate that into TCIP. So we are working on doing just that. So that amendment is perfectly acceptable and approved by staff, and we'll get that done for you. Hopefully, I would say in August and September.
Excellent. Thanks again, Allison, for all your work and everyone that served on the committee. I mean, it was some great conversation. Supervisor McCoy did a great job chairing it. Everyone's participation really helped to get us where we need to go. And I think that's a good amendment. So it doesn't go on the shelf. We can always take a look at it annually or even sooner and just see how we're doing. And not just us, but with federal dollars and state dollars. So we have a motion and seconded, right, Mr. Attorney? Are we good with that? Okay. So we need to vote on the amended portion of it, and I need a motion for that.
Motion.
I'd make that motion that we vote on the amendment to the EJ policy.
Okay.
To incorporate the report as outlined by Chris Coleman.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, Reba.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. We don't need to vote on that anymore, then, right? Okay. Item number 11 is report vote on the updated surface transportation block grant scoring criteria from Zach.
Yes, I want to give you an overview of some changes that we're proposing to make to the SVG scoring criteria. We had kind of begun this discussion with the funding subcommittee back on their March 31st meeting. They had requested that we take a look at our scoring for the next funding cycle. So we already kind of planned on doing this over the summer. At the request of the executive committee, we kind of moved that up to incorporate some of these EJ things. But real quickly, I'll just kind of go into kind of the changes that we have made. Essentially, we decided to update the scoring based on two things. One, to include the updated EJ information that was just discussed, and then also to address a disconnect we've been seeing between the priorities that we lay out in the long-range plan and how those priorities were scoring on the annual funding process. So those are really the two driving factors for why we've made the proposed changes to the scoring criteria. So the proposed changes that we're making, the main one is to add in this base score into the application based on the various different application categories. So we have, our system capacity category, major reconstruction replacement, and system optimization. And so the proposal is to create this base score where major reconstruction replacement would start off with 45 points automatically just for being submitted in that category. System optimization would start off with 30 points, and then system capacity would start off with 15. And again, the reason for these various different starting points is based on priorities that are outlined in the long-range plan. In the long-range plan, we identify, taking care of our existing system and making sure that we're spending money to make sure that we're taking care of that system. It's kind of the main priority. So we wanted to acknowledge that with this base score. In addition to that, we are proposing some changes to the actual scoring criteria. The scoring criteria is what is based off of the goals and performance measures that are outlined in the long-range plan. We're going to keep this out of 100 points still, and it'll be on top of the base score. So whatever points are scored under the criteria score will be added on to the base score. So some of the changes that we have made, if you can follow along your agenda, we have a red line copy of the criteria so you can see what changes are being proposed. When I talk about criteria, I'll be talking about the original criteria number. So on criteria 1, what we have proposed there is to change it from a total of 15 points down to 10 points. And basically the reason for that is we need to shuffle some points around so there'd be more points in other categories. We felt like since we already had the base score that was acknowledging the importance of taking care of our existing system, that we could afford to remove a few points from category 1. Category 3, we're proposing to completely remove that from the scoring criteria. Category 3 deals with future congestion, it's based on level of service. Federal Highway is kind of encouraging us to move away from using level of service. And also what we were finding is that in all the projects that were submitted, we weren't really seeing any projects scoring points in this category. So we just kind of felt like it was a waste of points. We could better allocate those points into a different criteria. Very similar with criteria 4. This dealt with projects that were addressing freight bottlenecks. The freight bottlenecks are kind of identified regions across the metro. And so there really weren't, and there's only a handful of them that are identified. And projects, again, weren't scoring points in those categories. So we just felt, again, like it made more sense to pull that category out and allocate those points elsewhere. Criteria 5 is the EJ methodology. It's the EJ question. So that's where we've updated it based on the presentation that Allison just provided. So we're including the new methodology in there. And also, we increased the points from 5 in the past to now would be 10 points that you can score in criteria 5 for EJ. Criteria 6, this one deals with basically high traffic areas. And so we increased this from 5 points to 10 points just to acknowledge that those areas that have more traffic are probably a little bit higher priority in the scoring process. On criteria 13, we're proposing that we remove this one. This one dealt with energy consumption, idle reduction, projects that were improving electric vehicle infrastructure. And not that we don't acknowledge that these are important things, but the way that we word the question in the application was basically just asking people to tell us how their project was addressing these things. We didn't have a real good way to confirm whether or not those things were being followed up on. And so again, we just felt like maybe we could allocate these points to a different criteria. And also we, had instances where a lot of projects just weren't certain points in this category as well. Criteria 14, this is the last major change that we're proposing. This is the safety, and we're proposing that we change it from 5 points that we're doing in the past to now 15 points. And I think we've had a lot of discussions about safety over the past years. We just felt like it was probably important to acknowledge the importance of safety by prioritizing it a little bit more and giving it some more points. So those are the changes that we're proposing. We did provide this table in the presentation here, just kind of give you an idea of how making these changes would affect scoring. So in the first column there's the original score from 2025 based on the previous scoring criteria. And then we also rescore those projects based on the updated scoring criteria. And I think what I would point out on this is that, what we were seeing in the past was the disconnect between the projects that were submitted for, major reconstruction replacement, those projects that were really prioritized in one taking care of our existing system. But they were traditionally scoring really low. Like there was the Urbandale preservation project that scored a 7 last year with the old scoring. The Hickman Road rehabilitation in Des Moines scored 10. Under the new scoring system, that Hickman Road project in Des Moines would score 75, and the Meredith Drive project would score 52. So we just feel like this new system, especially with that base score, just really helps to give more of the point value to those projects that are emphasized in the long range plan. And we feel like this table shows how the updates to the scoring system are helping us achieve that. In addition to that, we were asked to look at the EJ subcommittee suggested that we look at EJ target for the funding process. And so we went back and reviewed basically the past 5 years of projects that were submitted and awarded funding that were located in EJ areas. We broke it down 2 different ways. EJ percentage, including the DART awards, and then EJ without the DART awards. And so you can see that with including the DART awards, we've got kind of a spread of between 14 and 51% over the last 5 years, with an average of 30. And then without DART, it was lower. It was from 4 to 40% with a 20% average. And so what staff proposed to the funding subcommittee was that we look at a target of 30%, including the DART awards as that target that we would set for spending within EJ areas. And that again was based off that 5-year average. So that is what we proposed to the funding subcommittee at their June 3rd meeting. We ran through all of these proposed changes with them and presented the suggestion to do the 30%. And they suggested that we move forward with the changes as proposed. And so we presented these to the executive committee at their meeting last week, and they also approved these changes. So we're bringing this item for the policy committee today for final approval. If you have any questions about any of the proposed changes, I'd be happy to take those questions at this time.
Great, thank you, Zach. Do you have any questions for Zach? Anyone? Comments? Good work, thank you. This is a voting item.
Move to approve, Ruth.
Second, Reva.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 12 is a report and vote on the fiscal year 2022 investment policy from Dylan.
Thank you. Annually, the MPO updates, reviews and updates its investment policy, which just identifies how we're going to use the funds and invest the funds that we have, not the STP funds, but more the operational funds of the organization. So up there on the screen, you can see where we currently have our investments, including at the Iowa Public Trust Agency, which is administered by Wells Fargo, and at checking and money market accounts with First National Bank. In May, we met with the finance subcommittee, and one of the items we had them look at was this investment policy to see if they have any changes. They did have a couple of things they thought needed to be updated with the policy, more so to make sure the policy aligns with how we're actually doing things. Those adjustments were to add savings accounts and money market accounts to the list of approved investment instruments, which just weren't listed in there at that time. So in the agenda packet, starting on page 19, there's a red line version of the investment policy that does make those changes. It's just that one minor change. And with that, the finance subcommittee recommended approval, as did the executive committee at their meeting last week, to move forward with this investment policy for the coming year. If there's any questions about any of that, I'm happy to take them.
Dylan, thank you. Any questions for Dylan?
Is that action?
Yeah, this is the voting item.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 13 is a report vote on the self-certification. Dylan.
Thank you. Another item that the MPO is supposed to do annually, which is self-certify our planning process. Typically, the MPO, and always the MPO, does include a self-certification document in the tip. However, during our recent certification review a couple months ago, Federal Highway and US DOT suggested that we do this outside of the tip just to make sure everyone's aware of the things that go into the self-certification. So we're not just sliding it in there, and the board especially just isn't aware of these things. So we wanted to take this time to walk through some of these, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but really just make sure everyone's aware of the various federal rules and regulations that we have to adhere to, and just acknowledging that we do in fact adhere to all of these, so we can include that self-certification in the tip with that understanding. So up there on the screen, there's a list of 8 different things that we have to comply with. And I won't go through these one by one, but you can see what those are. Some of these are federal acts, such as the Clean Air Act, the Older Americans Act, the American Disabilities Act, and so forth. There's also certain things just in terms of the planning process that are outlined by US code, such as we have to have what they call a 3C planning process. We also have to have the fiscally constrained tip and long range plan. All of these things we do, and they are backed up by the certification review we just went through that kind of give us US DOT's backing, Iowa DOT's acknowledgement that we do those things. We also have the last one there is the prohibition on using federal funds for lobbying, which we do not do because we don't have a lobbyist, and any of the funds we use to go to DC, we do not use federal funds on those. So if there's any questions about any of this, now would be the time that we can talk about it. Otherwise, really the action here is just to acknowledge that we're all in agreement that we do these things. And then when we approve the tip, which will be next month, there'll be a document in the tip. There's an appendix really that just is a self-certification document that Todd will sign that says we do comply with all of these things. So if there's any questions about any of this, we're happy to take this now. Some of these things, obviously the Title VI, we just discussed that earlier in the agenda. But if there's any of these other things that you have questions about, how do we actually comply with these, or what do we do with them? Now we'd be happy to take those questions.
Thank you, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan about this? This is our last voting item. I would entertain. Is there a second? Second. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 14 is a report on the Purple Arc Highway update from Todd.
Thanks, Joe, and feel free to jump in. I know you had a meeting with the director last week as well. We've developed a scope of services for some studies that we need to do with the DOT to finish out some requirements for their process. You can see those listed there. Basically, analysis on traffic and operations, and also making sure the roadway criteria meets interstate standards. We've done some of that. This is a little more finer detailed. Cost for those studies in total is around $250,000. We're working with some partner agencies to help fund that study, as well as a request to go out to member communities along the corridor on a cost sharing basis. We'll also ask the DOT to participate in that, and get that underway late in probably in August would be my guess. So that's going on. We're also been reviewing language about exemptions for both the slow moving vehicles as well as overweight vehicles, and working on that and how we can move those processes along to get to the interstate designation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Todd, thank you. I'll jump in real quick. I had a really good meeting with the director and one of his deputies last Wednesday. I drove up to Ames. Some of the things that I found interesting is they definitely are in favor of this, but we have some major hurdles, I believe, that we're going to need to jump through. The first one would be the weight limit. This is a federal weight limit of that's been in action since, I believe, the early 90s or even the late 80s, to where it's been frozen at whatever rate you were at, the weight limit. I think ours is like 80,000 tons.
Correct.
It's been frozen there, and multiple communities and areas have tried to get theirs raised and have struggled to do that. That's not to say that we can't get it done, but I think that's going to be our biggest obstacle that we're going to have to get through with the help of our federal delegation to help try to push this through in a transportation bill. The other one is the slow moving vehicles. I think that one is a little bit more maybe able to get accomplished. I think that the director had some really out of the box ideas that I think would work good, not only for this particular roadway, but in general all over the country, where we have slow moving vehicles traveling everywhere on the interstate. That if we can come up and partner with some of our state colleges and maybe get a grant, that they can put a transponder in each one of those slow moving vehicles, and they can give you a notification as you're driving in your car or on your phone that you're coming up to them. And so that would be helpful, not only for this stretch, but all over the country. You know, he's looking at doing that and applying for some grants and working with, whether it be University of Iowa or Iowa State, and working with some folks to try to make that happen. And I was really encouraged to hear that they're trying to think out of the box of how we can get this accomplished. You know, obviously safety has always come up. That's one of their biggest concerns, but I think we can get through this. It was a good conversation. I don't think that we're going to have any more of the 40 to 50 people on a Zoom meeting. I think it's going to be more of a one-on-one conversations with Farm Bureau they're going to have, with the co-op community, with us as elected officials, and we're going to be able to work together with some of them instead of having 40 people on a Zoom meeting. And that probably didn't work out real well. And he admitted that probably wasn't the right thing to do at this point, but it was a good conversation. I think we'll be getting a letter from him very, very soon. I didn't know if Andy was on, if he wanted to make a comment. I'm sure you've had discussions with maybe the director or even the deputy that was in there. Is Andy on?
It was earlier.
Yep. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with Stu Anderson. He's now the director of our development, who is, he's in over planning, but now is also design. And
Yep.
so I just want to let him know that I was coming here, and that, you know, we were told the task force option, or that, you know, that process, like you said, has kind of been put on hold and likely probably won't be back in. I don't know if we, you know, get past that point and get to a point where we could, you know, get back in person, and we have, you know, ideas and things, there might be options, but you're right, Joe. He said, you know, looking at another letter similar to what we had put out in the past, you know, several years ago, and, you know, and just moving forward from that. So I think, like you said, you know, I think the initial task force meeting, in my opinion, you know, set the stage of all of the, you know, the information and, you know, where we need to go. And I'm glad that, you know, you guys, you know, starting to see that on the national side of things and the federal thing that, you know, those haven't been changed in a lot of areas. So it's going to be quite a bit of work and, you know, maybe some heavy lifting, but I think it's the right thing to try to work towards. So.
Yeah, it's the governor's proclamation that she allows heavier vehicles on highways. That doesn't allow them on interstates. And so that's where we run into trouble, where they're hauling up soybeans and to ADM using this particular road to do this. And you know, even though it's built to be able to probably handle more, we're still frozen at that 80,000. And we're going to need to be able to work on that. That to me was probably the most information that I've gotten in a clear perspective of what our task is going to need to be. And before we do any more studies, and he said that they would participate in the study, but before we do that, we probably need to work on this weight restriction before we go spend any more money on any more studies. So I'm not sure if we want to do that in August. I don't think that he would recommend we do it in August, Todd. So we might want to pull back on that a little bit until we maybe talk to some of our delegation in DC and see what their recommendation would be on how to get there.
It'll be ready for when we need it.
Okay.
100% agree. So.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to item 15 is a report on the Economic Development District update from Gunner.
We would like to keep you apprised of the progress being made on the establishment of an economic development district for central Iowa. You've seen this slide before, but I'd like to remind you of the overall arch of this process. We did weigh whether there's support for it in the 7-county region, and it came back unanimously from the county supervisors that it was. We are a healthy way into phase 2, which is the creation of the entity. Once we have all the pieces in place, we'll put in for designation from the EDA. And then once we have that designation, we can move into being fully operational. We anticipate that being the case by early next calendar year. To dive into a little bit about the steps being taken in the current phase, the SEDS development is the primary focus. We formed a steering committee in April. In May, we held a SWOT analysis and goal setting session with stakeholders. In this month, we've been working to get stakeholder feedback on draft vision, goals, and objectives. In July, we're going to move into project selection and finalize the draft documents so that by August, we're just reviewing and getting the document ready for final submission. We did draft a vision statement. I'm not going to linger on this too much or read the whole thing to you, but I'll give you a few seconds to scan real quick.
I think I filled out a survey today that had some of those in there, didn't I?
We also developed some draft goals also in the survey that I'll be mentioning here in a minute. The question came up at exec as to our process of drafting these, and I'll say that yes, we are looking to other sets, that other regions throughout the region to make sure that what has been approved elsewhere is being replicated here, albeit tailored to our own region. So looking ahead at some of the next major steps, there is a survey out on the street right now. I think it'd be appropriate for us to send that to our policy committee after this meeting. It's just asking for stakeholder feedback on these draft vision goals and SWOT analysis. We're working on finishing the SEDS document and other prerequisites for the EDD designation application. We're also looking to create the legal entity. Our legal counsel has recommended a 504 nonprofit over at 2080 because of ease of setup. We've identified a name, Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance for Community Development, or MIPA. This is a real functional name, kind of like the MDO is a very functional name. And then we've also are starting to think about initiating conversations with potential member governments. We've identified late 2021 as the time when we're going to need to be paying special attention to that as your governments are putting together the budgets. We have heard from some potential members that they want to start those conversations sooner rather than later. And I would invite any of you, if you're looking to have those conversations on the early end, please feel free to reach out. We'd be glad to accommodate that. That's it for me, unless I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Gunnar? Thank you. Appreciate the update. Item number 16 is report on the transload facility from Zach.
Yes, just want to give you a real quick update on where we're at with the transload facility development. They've been out on site, doing a lot of grading and site work, prepping for their warehouse pad. They did that kind of April, May timeframe. If you've been by the facility recently, you can see that they've moved on from that. We did receive our first reimbursement request from Moines Industrial last week. We submitted that to the FRA. The request was for a little over $1 million. It's a reimbursement program, and they're reimbursing this at like 72%. So that's why the reimbursement check that we got back was for $757,000. We turned that around and dropped that off with Moines Industrial today. So really happy and pleased with how smoothly that reimbursement process went with the FRA. All in all, I believe I submitted it on Thursday of last week. They approved it on Monday, and the money was in our account on Wednesday. So very, very smooth, quick process. We're really excited about. We do have a few images, as I mentioned. This is kind of what the site looked like back in probably late April, early May. We have some more pictures. This maybe was middle May. You can see they're kind of prepping that warehouse pad there. A couple of staff members went out to the site maybe a week and a half ago now, and you can see they've got foundations laid. The pad has been built up, and they're going to start actually craning in the concrete walls early next week. So that's going to be really exciting to start seeing kind of the vertical building go up on the site. So if you're in the area and you want to drive by anytime, I think Monday, Tuesday is when they're going to be doing this. Apparently they're going to have cranes. They're going to have a crane out there. They're going to be bringing in these sections of wall about every 45 minutes. I think they're bringing in 3 sections and putting them up. So should be a pretty fun thing to see happen. And we'll be looking forward to see that building start to go up. This is just the basic schedule that I've had on the slide before, just kind of see, what kind of things are going to happen over the rest of the summer. Essentially, the closeout is going to happen in March of 2022, but the building warehouse will be completed in January, and that's kind of their date for when they're saying the site will be operational, basically, is in January of 2022. So I believe that's all for my update. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions for Zach? It's pretty impressive when you drive over the Southeast 14th Bridge and just look down. I think back 7 years ago, there was a burned out building there. The Municipal Service Center wasn't there. It's changed a lot in 7 years. Yeah. So, that's,
they're pulling some design elements from the Municipal Services building to kind of tie into the warehouse building. So it's not going to be your typical warehouse looking building.
No, that's what they told me. I had an opportunity to go down there and visit at the site. I'd welcome anybody that wants to do that from the MPO. Paul County would be happy to take you around and show you there. It's pretty impressive. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, item 17 is a report on the water trails from Todd.
Yeah, thank you. We continue to work with our partners on the necessary sub-agreements. Those were attached to your agenda, at least the drafts of those agreements. So if you have any questions on those, be happy to address those. We've shared those with our partner agencies, and we're pretty close to final on most of those. We'll be bringing those back to you in August for approval. That's when we'll be trying to get through a lot of agreements and a lot of processes, not only at the MPO, but at the city as well, to get the permits and various actions needed to move into the bidding process later this fall. Otherwise, the design team continues to move forward. They're finalizing their design plans and getting everything in place. We're making progress with all our environmental and permitting issues with DNR and EPA. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Todd. Any questions? Comments? All right, we'll move on to item 18 is report on legislative update from Dylan.
Thank you. I wanted to give a quick update on the status of reauthorization. Both the House and the Senate have passed bills out of their respective committees with respect to the reauthorization bill. So on the House side, on June 4th, something called the Invest Act of 2021 was introduced by the House T&I Committee. And on the 26th of May, the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act of 2021 was introduced. I'm going to put links in the chat and we'll send these out because I know there's a few people in the room there via email. If you want to read more about what is in these bills and kind of the thinking on these bills, at least from one organization that we're a member of, which is Transportation for America. So those will give you more of the insight of the very, the particulars of those bills. Both the bills are increases above what the current bill is, the FAST Act, and both have similar programs that they've added with respect to, as it says there in the screen, carbon reduction, safety, data-driven planning, resiliency, and so forth. It sounds like the goal for both of these bills is to be brought to the floor of each respective chamber by the end of the month or by the 4th of July holiday. So we'll see if that actually happens. And then once that happens, they'll have to get together and compromise on what actually makes it through. It does sound like in both of these bills, there are going to be aspects of the Jobs Act that are kind of separate, but there's going to be certain things added to it. It sounds like that will kind of find their way into being implemented through the Transportation Reauthorization Bill. The other federal update is that a few months ago, we talked to you about the earmark process that was coming back, and there was an earmark process for both appropriations as well as one for reauthorization. And on the appropriation side, each House member was limited to 10 earmark requests. And so we submitted a bunch of earmark requests, the respective cities and counties throughout the region, throughout the whole district for Representative Axney. She was only able to submit 10. That list has been published now. So there were 3 from our area that made the list, 3 transportation projects anyway from our area. And I put those up on the screen. The Warren County project is right on the MPO border, so I erred on the side of including it anyway, even though it might technically be just outside the MPO area. But anyway, you can see what those are. That bill is still being developed, so no word yet of whether these will actually make it in and receive funding, but just for sake of information, those are the projects that made it forward. That's all I have for you on legislative update, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Dylan, thank you. Any questions or comments for Dylan? All right, item 19 is report on upcoming events from Gusco.
Just wanted to bring to your attention, there's an upcoming webinar on electric vehicle toolkits available just to help planning for the adoption of electric vehicles. Noon on Wednesday, the 30th. Contact information is up on the screen. Yeah, answer any questions if I can.
Thanks, Heather. Any questions? All right, item 20 is other non-action items of interest to the committee. Todd, you have a couple of things?
Yeah, real quick. Thanks, Joe. We have no policy meeting next month. Just wanted to remind everybody of that. And then in August, we'll be bringing a draft of the our quadrennial certification review. We've seen the draft of it. There were no findings of deficiency for the MPO and several commendations. So we'll be bringing that to you in August for your review. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all. Yep, absolutely. Mr. Holmes, thank you. Our next meeting date for full policy is August 19th here at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure.
One more thing, Joe. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that Tanvi, who's been with us as an intern for a while now, recently was found a full-time employment out in North Carolina. I hope I got the right Carolina. Accepted a position with a planning agency out there. So I want to say thanks to Tanvi for all her help and wish her well in her new career path.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you everyone for having me at the MPO.
Thanks for everything. We sure appreciate it. Our next meeting date is August 19th. It'll be here. I'm not sure if we'll still have a Zoom option or not by then. I guess it'll be up to the governor whether it's even allowed at that point in time. And this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're supposed to hear at the end of this month, everything that she's gonna do. That's what I'm wondering.